Hey everybody from the Badger Rock Greenhouse. We are in here with our new honeybees for the season. So today's workshop is on putting new honeybees into a new hive. So starting a hive from the beginning. And one way you can, the first thing that you need to have a honeybee hive is honeybees. So there are two ways you can get bees. One is to purchase bees. There are a number of people around town and around the country who sell honeybees. And they usually come in on trucks from other parts of the country, and they come in boxes like this. This is 3 pounds of worker bees and 1 queen. Every hive only has 1 queen. If there are more than 1 queen in a hive, they will fight to the death and decide which queen wins. 1 queen per hive. So she comes in her own little box in here, and the reason is that this queen and these worker bees are not related. If they were, they wouldn't have to be separated, but because they're not related, she comes in her own little wooden box, which we'll show you when we get up into the bee yard, so that the worker bees can kind of get used to her, get accustomed to her scent. They feed her through the screen in her own little box, and we leave them separate for I usually leave them separate for the first 3 days in the hive before I let the queen out of her box. Otherwise, the workers may not be accustomed to her, and they may kill her. So you want to make sure that your queen is healthy and well, because she is the one who keeps the hive going. She spends her whole life laying somewhere between 1,200 and 2,000 eggs every single day. Wow. She goes on one flight in her life. She gets mated by a bunch of drones, which are the male bees. And then she has enough genetic material in her body to then lay all those eggs for the rest of her life. When you buy bees too, they are shipped across the country in a box, and they have a little container of sugar water in there. That's what they eat while they're traveling, sugar water. It's not the ideal food for bees. The ideal food is nectar, honey, pollen. So that's what you would want to feed your bees if you can and have the opportunity. The downside of buying bees, they're pretty expensive. Bees like $150 to start a new hive, something like that. The other way to start a hive is to catch a swarm. And that is my favorite way. If you can find one, that's the trick. So sometimes beehives will outgrow their space, and the honeybees are looking for more room. They take their queen with them, and they leave the hive. And they leave half the workers behind. If the queen leaves behind an egg, too, the workers will feed that egg when it hatches a special combination of nectar and pollen called royal jelly to grow themselves a new queen. And then the queen and the workers that left, they usually land somewhere in a little ball, a cluster with the queen in the very middle. They are so chill when they're swarming because they have no babies and no honey to protect. So you can literally just go up to a swarm if you find one, whap it into a bucket, throw the top on it, go and dump it in your hive, and there you go. That's the only way I ever started a hive when I was in Oakland. Since I've moved to the Midwest, it can be hard to find a swarm because everybody else is also looking for them. Mm-hmm. So there are honeybee forums and things online, and listservs and email groups. And whenever there's a swarm, I see emails going out, there's a swarm here. And by the time you get there, it's usually gone. So, but catching swarms is another free way to get bees. If your own bees swarm, that is gold right there, because they will leave your hive. If you're lucky, they'll land on like a fence or a tree right next to your hive. You can just put the pieces for a new hive together, whap them in a bucket, dump them in on one little, 5-foot radius or whatever. So
don't gotta lose your bees then, at least.
Yes, that's right. So we have Forrest, too, our videographer today. He went and helped me pick these up this morning. We get them from Mary Sully. So if you're looking for bees, let me know. I can connect you. She has part of her farm business is selling bees in the spring.
Where's that located, Sarah?
That is in, I'm going to blank on it.
Brooklyn?
Brooklyn, thank you, Forrest. I always tell Forrest, I'm directionally challenged. This is very true.
Brooklyn, Wisconsin.
Brooklyn, Wisconsin, just south of Madison. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went out there today. It's a little cold today for installing bees, to be honest. So Mary said she usually waits until it's about 38 without wind chill to install bees. It's a little chillier today, so we're just going to do it really fast. That's why we're in here in the greenhouse doing this part, so our bees don't get chilled while they're waiting to go in. So that's what a package of bees looks like. You just pop this little top off. You take the sugar water out. You take the queen and her little box out. You put her in the hive first, then you pour the workers on top of her. They all want to stay with her, so they will just go into that hive and they will stay put. Yeah, and if you're building a hive from the beginning, you're going to need some pieces. If you're doing a Langstroth hive, there's lots of different kinds of hives out there too. This is just one type. So here are the pieces of a hive. You need to have what's called a screened bottom board. This goes on the very bottom of the hive. This screen is really important because it lets the hive have some good air circulation, which is really important for keeping the bees cool in the summer when it gets really hot. So this is a screened bottom board is what it's called. You'll need one of those. You can also build them. There are instructions. You can find them online. Designs to build your own, and it's really fun. So I encourage y'all to do that if you have the time and inclination. You'll also need what's called an entrance reducer. This is how the bees get in and out of the hive. When you first start a hive, you want the entrance to be on the smallest little hole possible. So it would be like this. And then as the bee colonies grow, once the queen starts laying and the season starts bumping and you start having to add boxes to your hive as they grow, you flip the entrance reducer to the bigger size first. See, this would be the entrance size now. And then when the season is really bumping and there's like nonstop coming and going from the hive, you can take this out completely and just let them have a free-for-all in and out. You also, if you're keeping bees, especially if you keep them in the winter, you're going to want to have a top entrance on your hive. I can show you what that looks like too. And this right here, this box, we teach our students, our middle school students, how to make these. That's why they're so beautifully decorated too.
Yep.
This is called a super. And this size of super is called a medium super. You can also get deep supers, which are a lot taller.
Ooh.
But man, when the bees pack those supers with honey, they get heavy. I would struggle lifting a full deep super from a hive. And since I'm also a short person, it's even more of a challenge because the honey will be towards the top of the hive, and getting a big deep super off the top without tweaking your back, I just stick with mediums all the way around.
Good in between size for sure.
Yes, totally. So mediums are where I go. And so you'll need supers. You can buy them assembled or you can buy them unassembled. And assembly is literally just knocking some nails in to put this together. They're less expensive unassembled. So go for it. Again, if you are good with wood, you can build your own just from pieces of wood too. But use untreated wood. You do not want treated wood, and you don't want painted wood or wood with a stain on it. The only thing that you should put on any wood, if you're looking to try to preserve it a little longer, is wax. Bees can handle wax, but not much else. Each super has frames in it too. So we've kind of moved to using these plastic frame foundations. So this is foundation that bees can build their wax on top of. So if you look right here, this is an example of bees starting to build wax on top of a plastic foundation. Ideally, we wouldn't use plastic foundation, but it helps them build really, really straight, which makes it easier to beekeep because you can take these frames in and out really easily. You can use wax foundation. That works pretty well, but sometimes if it's really hot when you put it in, it can get a little melty and wavy, and they start building not quite as straight. And replacing it is a little bit more of a challenge than having just plastic. So wax foundation is an option. You can also do what's called foundation-less frames, where you just have an empty frame and you attach, I attach a couple popsicle sticks to the top just as a guide for where the bees should build. And then they can just freeform build their wax themselves. That is the best way and my favorite way, but you got to have your hive perfectly level because they build with gravity. And so if your hive's not perfectly level, if there's frost heaves or things that have moved it, they might build their comb wonkadoo, and then you got to really wrestle to get these frames out when you want to harvest the honey or inspect the hive. So, yeah, and if you look in here, this is honey. So first they build the wax. They have a special organ on their body called a wax gland to build the wax. They build their cells exactly the same size. It's just like baked into their genetics to know how to do this. And then they collect nectar from the flowers. They spit it from bee mouth to bee mouth to get those good enzymes in there. And then they dry it out with their wings so there's almost no water left. And they put a wax cap on top of it, and that is where you get capped honey. So this is honeycomb. If you buy honeycomb in a store, this is where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So that is called capped honey right there.
Beeswax in there too.
Yes, yep. And the beeswax also you can use. So once you process your honey, we'll do another workshop on that later in the season, but you can process your honey. You can also save your wax to be able to use it for different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So these are just a couple of frames. This is a plastic foundation. And this one was a wax foundation. See that little wire?
Oh, yeah.
Lots of wax foundation has wires in it to help hold it straight. And then at some point, the wax, sometimes it gets just replaced by the wax that the bees build, and you have no foundation at all left in there.
Mm-hmm.
It takes the bees a lot more energy to make wax than it does for them to make honey. So if you can save it's called drawn comb, that wax they make from year to year, and reuse it, that's going to save your bees a lot of work. So when you first put your supers on, you're going to let the queen out in 3 days if you purchased bees. She is going to start laying eggs. And the bottom couple boxes in a hive are called brood chambers, because that is where the queen will lay her eggs. And they will be full of these little cells that the bees make, will be full of eggs that will hatch into larvae, and then the larvae will develop into baby bees. There are worker bees whose job it is to be nurse bees. They feed the babies and take care of them and raise them until they emerge as adult bees. We'll check out that later in the season too when we have some babies to look at. And here's some wax foundation without any bees having built on it yet. So that's what that looks like. Wax foundation.
So how many eggs does the queen lay usually, Sarah?
So she lays between 1,200 and 2,000 every single day.
Wow.
What a life. I would not like to be a queen bee, but I appreciate all she does for us.
Mm-hmm. All the hard work.
Yes, and the worker bees have a lot of different jobs over the course of their lives. At some point, each bee has different jobs. So they could be guard bees. They protect the entrance of the hive. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who would usually sting you if a bee is going to sting you. Honeybees, though, they are chill. They don't want to sting you. If they sting you, they rip their own organs out and they die. Mm-hmm. So that's not the goal. They will only sting you if they really feel in danger. Yeah.
Kind of, they'll die for the hive though if they need to.
They sure will.
Very dedicated.
Yeah, honeybees are interesting because they're like, rather than acting as a bunch of individual bees, they almost act like one organism, the hive, more. And they will die for their hive. Some bees are forager bees. They're the ones who go out and collect nectar and pollen to eat. Some bees are nurse bees. They raise the babies. Mm-hmm. Some bees are the queen's attendants. They check in on her and make sure she's all good. Lots of different things over the course of the bee's life.
Different roles, yeah. You never think they'll have a different role.
Honeybees they're amazing. Once you get hooked, you are hooked, and there's no going back. Mm-hmm. So when you start a hive, you usually start with just one super to get the bees acclimated and in there and starting to build and starting to get kind of rooted in their hive. Mm-hmm. And then as the colony grows, you add more supers along the way. Yep. So when you start a hive, the next piece after the super would be what's called the inner cover. This is just a really important piece to separate the hive from the outside world. And you can see it has a little slot on here. That is called an upper entrance. Really important, especially if you're beekeeping in the winter, because sometimes the snow will get deep enough it covers the bottom entrance, and they have to have a way to come. Oh, a bee got loose. They have to have a way to come in and out in the winter, because on days that get above 40, they will do house cleaning. They will take bee poop and dead bees out of the hive to clean up. And you'll see bee poop sitting in the snow. So, and in the summer, when the hives are really cranking, top entrance can be good. When we first put them in, we usually flip it this way so that there's not a top entrance, just so the bees can really get established in there. And then the next piece is called a telescoping cover. It's just a piece with weatherproofing on the top, which is usually metal. You put that on there, and that will keep moisture out of your hive. A wet hive is a dead hive. You do not want moisture in your hive, so don't beekeep when it's raining or when it's snowing or when there's moisture can get in your hive. Not a good thing. And then I put a weight on top of this, usually a small cinder block or a rock, to keep critters who are interested in going to check out your honey, like raccoons, bears. Well, it wouldn't stop a bear, but we don't have bears here. On top of your hive to keep the critters out and to weigh this down so that, you know, it doesn't get blown off in a windstorm or something too. So yeah, bottom board, entrance reducer, super, inner cover, telescoping cover. Those are the pieces of a hive. You can get them from so many different places. Farm and Fleet sells them, I know. Dadant is a beekeeping company that sells them. There is an organization out of Columbus, Wisconsin that's a local beekeeping organization that y'all should definitely support and check out. And I'll put the links to some of those places in the comments on this video so you can do some shopping around. Also, check FreeCycle, check Facebook Marketplace, because lots of times people will start keeping bees and then after a season or two, they're like, and then they have all this bee equipment they're trying to get rid of. And so sometimes you can find it for free or cheap on those places too. So yeah, that is the pieces of a hive, the frames, the bees in a box. And the next thing we're going to show you all is how to install them. So we will catch up with you all in a few minutes up in the bee yard.
All right, we're back out here at the beehives, getting ready to put the bees into the boxes. Over here we got a full super with, I think, 4 honey frames in there. And that'll be the food for the new bees we're just installing. Come Sarah with the box of bees.
Here we are. Okay, and because it's chilly, we're going to just do this fast, you all. So get ready for some quick moving if we can. The hardest part is getting this little piece of wood off. So this little piece of wood that I'm taking off is what's holding the queen, the little box with the queen, and the can with the sugar water in. So you can just pop it off with this is a hive tool. That's something else you'll definitely need if you're going to be beekeeping, because the bees stick everything together on you. They make this sticky bee glue called propolis, and to be able to inspect your hive or to take anything in or out, you have to break that propolis, and this hive tool is the best way to do it. So here is the sugar water. This is always a little bit of a struggle to get this out of here. See if I can do this real quick. Ooh, okay, take it out, pop this on here. Here's the queen. She's in her little box. I'm not going to keep her out for very long because it's cold out here. You see her? You probably can't see her because she's covered in bees. The bees surround her and take care of her, and she is in her own little world over here. So I'm just going to make sure that she is nestled in between 2 frames, but with the screen side of her box accessible to the bees so that they can continue to feed her and take care of her. And then you just whack the bees on the ground to loosen them up, and you pour them into the hive. I know it's weird to think about pouring bees, but that is literally what you're doing. You just whack them on the ground again, pour them in. Some bees will die when you install them. That is just part of the deal. And then, if you can't get them all out, it's not a big deal. You just lean the box up against the front of the hive, and they will find their way in there pretty quick. So if you look in the top, you can see this cluster of bees. They are all in there, and they are on top of their queen, happily sticking around. And I just put this empty super on there to keep them from spilling over the edges. And then I'm just going to really quickly, before they get too cold, just put the inner cover on. If you move it back and forth, the bees will get out of the way instead of getting squished as you put it on. Okay. There you go. So there's the inner cover. Here is the outer cover, the telescoping cover. You can see that make sure that puts on the, you can see that the entrance reducer is set to the smallest entrance. And the last thing to do is to put a weight on top of it. So like I said, you can use a rock. You can use one of these flat cinder block pieces. And if you have bees on your suit, don't worry. They're gonna come right off. They don't want to hang out with you. They want to be in their hive with their queen. So that is how to install a hive. In 3 days, I'll come back and open this up. And the queen is stuck in her box with a little cork. You just use a tweezers, take the cork out, and kind of shake gently so that she goes down into the hive and starts her job of laying eggs for the rest of her life. Honeybees are amazing. They not only provide honey, but they also provide pollination.
Mm-hmm.
They are also not native to this country. They're from Europe. So don't forget about your native bees too. We'll do another workshop later in the season around how to support native bees. They are totally different from honeybees. They don't make honey. They don't live in colonies. They're solitary. They live in cavities and in the ground. So we'll touch base about those a little later on, but they are designed for this climate. They're super efficient pollinators. They're great ones to support along with your honeybees. So happy beekeeping, everybody. Hope you have success if you try this out. And always feel free to holler if you're starting out beekeeping and you have any questions. Yeah, and enjoy the beginning of bee season. We'll catch y'all next time.
Awesome.